Look at the icon of the New York Harbor. 305 feet of copper and iron, standing defiantly against the brutal Atlantic winds. We are told this colossal structure was a gift from France, a poetic gesture of international friendship, designed by an artist, shipped across the ocean in wooden crates, and bolted together in 1886. Mainstream historians focus on the poetry. They read the bronze plaques. But at TitanMetrics, we do not read plaques. We read the blueprints. We audit the physics. When you subject the official construction narrative of the Statue of Liberty to a forensic engineering audit, the poetry evaporates, and a massive logistical contradiction takes its place. How do you assemble a 151-foot, 225-ton metal statue in the middle of a wind tunnel without a modern tower crane? How do you mix and pour 27,000 tons of concrete on a harbor island using wheelbarrows and 19th-century barges? How does a skin of copper, no thicker than 2 pennies, survive the catastrophic aerodynamic shear of a Category 2 hurricane? The timeline is an accounting error. The logistics are a mathematical fiction. Welcome to the audit. Let us calculate the true cost of liberty.
To understand the structural fraud, we must first analyze the skin of the Colossus. The official narrative dictates that the sculptor, Frédéric Auguste Bartholdi, utilized a technique called repoussé. According to the historical ledger, laborers painstakingly hammered 300 individual sheets of copper inside massive wooden molds until they formed the shape of a giant woman. These copper sheets are exactly 3/32 of an inch thick, that is 2.4 millimeters. Hold 2 copper pennies between your fingers. That is the absolute thickness separating the internal iron skeleton from the violent atmospheric pressure of the Atlantic Ocean. Total weight of the copper skin, 31 tons. Total weight of the internal iron framework, 125 tons. Now let us introduce the law of aerodynamic shear. New York Harbor is a high-velocity wind corridor, the geographic funnel created by the Hudson River and the Atlantic Ocean guarantees severe, sustained crosswinds. At 300 feet above sea level, a 150-foot asymmetrical metal sail generates an incomprehensible amount of aerodynamic drag. In modern structural engineering, a skyscraper's curtain wall is designed to flex and distribute wind loads through a massive computer-modeled damping system. But the Statue of Liberty is not a smooth aerodynamic cylinder. It is a highly irregular geometric shape. The folds of her copper dress, the extended arm holding the torch, the spikes of the crown, every single crevice acts as an air trap. When a 60-mile-per-hour gale hits the flat, non-aerodynamic surface of the statue's chest and robes, it generates hundreds of thousands of pounds of sheer horizontal force. We are told that Gustave Eiffel, the man who would later build the Eiffel Tower, designed an ingenious internal armature, a central iron pylon with a web of secondary iron trusses extending outward. Mainstream historians will point to Eiffel's system of sliding copper saddles, brackets meant to let the skin flex independently of the rigid iron spine without snapping. But this ignores the brutal reality of aerodynamic turbulence. In a 60-mile-per-hour gale, sliding metal-on-metal friction creates extreme mechanical stress. Copper is a highly ductile metal. When it violently flexes and grinds against an iron brace under severe atmospheric pressure, it work hardens, it becomes brittle, it tears. By all laws of mechanical engineering, the continuous flexing of Atlantic hurricanes should have sheared the copper rivets and ripped the paper-thin sheets of the robes off the armature within the first decade. The structural integrity of the Colossus defies the metallurgical limits of 1886.
But the mechanical shear is only the anomaly. The true impossibility lies in the chemistry. When you combine copper, iron, and a highly saline, moist environment like an ocean harbor, you do not just get a statue. You get a massive 225-ton galvanic battery. Galvanic corrosion is an unforgiving law of thermodynamics. When two dissimilar metals are in physical contact in the presence of an electrolyte, in this case, the saltwater spray of the Atlantic Ocean, electrons flow from the anodic metal to the cathodic metal. In the Statue of Liberty, the iron armature is the anode, the copper skin is the cathodic. The iron should literally sacrifice itself, dissolving into rust to protect the copper. The French artisans supposedly anticipated this. They allegedly insulated every single point of contact, over 300,000 individual connections, using primitive asbestos pads coated in shellac. Now, mainstream historians admit that this primitive insulation eventually failed. They acknowledged that by the 1980s, the galvanic battery had fully activated. The iron armature had swelled with rust to twice its original size, and rivets were violently popping out of the statue. But here is the catastrophic flaw in their logic. They are asking us to believe that this decaying, rust-swollen, electrochemically dissolving iron skeleton somehow withstood a century of Atlantic hurricanes and gale-force winds without collapsing. You cannot have it both ways. If the galvanic battery was actively destroying the core structural integrity, the aerodynamic shear would have ripped the statue apart decades before the massive 1986 restoration. The math does not add up. A rotting iron skeleton cannot hold a 31-ton copper sail in a hurricane.
Let us step down from the copper sky and look at the earth. Before the French could theoretically ship their statue, the Americans had to build a pedestal. Not just any pedestal, the largest concrete mass ever poured in the 19th century. 27,000 tons of concrete and granite. The location, Bedloe's Island, a tiny muddy speck in the harbor, home to the star-shaped ruins of Fort Wood. The official ledger states that architect Richard Morris Hunt designed an 89-foot-high pedestal. General Charles Pomeroy Stone was the chief engineer tasked with the pour. Let us audit the supply chain of this so-called triumph of American perseverance. 27,000 tons of material. That is 54 million pounds of heavy aggregate, sand, Portland cement, and megalithic granite blocks. How do you transport 54 million pounds of raw, heavy industry material across miles of choppy, unpredictable ocean water in 1884? The island had no deep-water ports capable of docking massive industrial freighters. They had to rely on small, flat-bottomed, horse- or steam-drawn barges. A standard heavy-duty transport barge of that era could carry perhaps 200 tons safely in a calm harbor. To move 27,000 tons requires 135 perfectly executed barge trips. But wait, the cement must be mixed. The concrete must be poured continuously to ensure structural homogeneity. A cold joint in a 27,000-ton monolithic block would cause a catastrophic structural failure under the colossal weight of the statue above. You cannot mix the largest concrete base in modern history using men with wooden shovels and wheelbarrows. Where were the massive steam-powered concrete batch plants? Where were the colossal silos holding the dry Portland cement?
archival photos of the island show a distinct lack of heavy industrial infrastructure. We see a few wooden shacks, some scaffolding, and piles of dirt. We do not see the roaring, smoke-belching industrial complex required to execute a monolithic pour of 54 million pounds. Furthermore, the pedestal is clad in massive, precisely cut granite blocks, some weighing several tons each. Just like the Erie Canal locks, the logistical bottleneck of moving megalithic stone across water to a muddy island is staggering. How did they lift these granite blocks into place? They claim they used steam-driven wooden derricks. A wooden derrick anchored in a high-wind harbor, lifting multi-ton granite blocks 80 feet into the air. The physical strain on the hemp ropes and the wooden booms would be critical. The official narrative asks us to ignore the limitations of 19th-century heavy lift capability. It demands that we accept a highly advanced industrial-scale material transfer on a muddy island without the photographic or accounting evidence of the necessary infrastructure.
But the ultimate logistical impossibility is the final assembly. In June of 1885, the French ship Isère allegedly arrived in New York, carrying 214 wooden crates containing the 350 disassembled pieces of the Colossus. Let us audit the exact physics of assembling a 150-foot puzzle in the sky. Today, to erect a structure of this height and complexity, you require a massive computerized tower crane, a crane rooted deeply into the bedrock, capable of counterbalancing tons of steel while rotating smoothly against harbor crosswinds. What did they have in 1886? The historical record claims they used a central wooden derrick, a crane that literally built itself upward inside the armature as the statue rose. Imagine the biomechanics of this operation. A massive, oddly shaped copper panel, acting exactly like a ship's sail, is hoisted 100 feet into the air by a steam winch. A 40-mile-per-hour gust of wind sweeps across the harbor. The copper panel instantly catches the wind. It spins. It swings violently. A 2-ton piece of sharp metal acting as a pendulum at the end of a hemp rope. How do the laborers, dangling from primitive wooden scaffolding, grab this swinging, massive sail of copper, pull it precisely into alignment, and hold it perfectly still against the wind, while another man drives a hot rivet through the exact millimeter-precise hole? You cannot muscle a 2-ton aerodynamic sail into a millimeter-perfect alignment using hand ropes in a gale. Even with modern hydraulic taglines and laser positioning, manipulating large flat panels in a high wind zone is grounds for an immediate safety shutdown on a construction site. Yet the narrative insists that a crew of mostly unskilled immigrant laborers and a few foremen flawlessly executed this high-altitude, blind puzzle assembly over the course of a few months. The absence of a massive, heavy-duty external crane infrastructure makes the assembly of the Statue of Liberty mathematically impossible. There are almost no clear, undisputed photographs showing the actual active hoisting of the heavy upper copper sections. We see photos of the pedestal. We see photos of the completed framework. But the critical mechanical moment, the lifting and bolting of the heaviest, highest aerodynamic loads, is remarkably absent from the visual record. So, what is the logical conclusion? If the aerodynamics violate metallurgical limits, if the chemistry contradicts the laws of galvanic thermodynamics, and if the assembly logistics lack the necessary crane infrastructure, what are we actually looking at? We must apply the TitanMetrics protocol. we must look past the bronze plaques and identify the foundational infrastructure. The pedestal of the Statue of Liberty sits upon Fort Wood, an 11-pointed star base. Mainstream history casually writes this off as an old, deactivated military fort. But as we have seen in our previous audits, these massive, geometrically perfect star structures are not mere colonial defense posts. They are the signature of a highly advanced, pre-existing global grid. The official narrative of the Statue of Liberty is not a story of creation. It is a story of reclamation and camouflage. The financial elite, the robber barons, did not orchestrate a miraculous transatlantic cooperative engineering feat just to build a symbol of friendship. They needed a cover story. Bedloe's Island, with its massive pre-existing star foundation, was already a critical node in an older, heavy industry infrastructure network. The monumental stone base, the incredible compressive strength of the foundation, it was already there. Did the French ship over a statue in crates? Or did they ship over the scaffolding and the cladding to repair, alter, and rebrand a colossal maritime structure that already dominated the harbor? By wrapping a pre-existing hyper-advanced internal pylon structure in a new politically symbolic copper skin, the financial elite accomplished two things. First, they claimed ownership of an ancient, impossible megastructure. Second, they patented the past, convincing the modern world that their era possessed the engineering capability to build the Colossus. The official gift from France was the ultimate infrastructural laundering operation. It provided a perfect emotional distraction from the brutal, unexplainable math of the harbor's true history.
When we audit the past, we cannot allow romanticism to override the laws of physics. The aerodynamic survival of the copper skin is a mechanical paradox. The century-long suspension of galvanic corrosion is a chemical fiction. And the assembly of a 150-foot metal puzzle without a heavy tower crane is a logistical absurdity. The Statue of Liberty is a masterpiece, but it is not a masterpiece of 19th-century pioneer construction. It is a masterpiece of institutional cover-up. The robber barons did not possess the technology to build the Colossus from scratch in 1886. They merely possessed the audacity to claim it. The math does not lie. The official narrative is a structural glitch. Keep calculating. Subscribe to TitanMetrics. The ledger remains open.